Hello, my name is Kevin Dodge, and today I'll be reading Storytime with Matt, Part 12, The Thing. When I was a kid, I went on a road trip with my dad and my uncle. They were always quick with bad jokes and great stories, and at some point in the drive, they started talking about a movie called The Thing. It sounded amazing and terrifying, and like something my very Christian mother would never, ever let me watch. They spun wild, gruesome recaps from the movie about heads dropping off of bodies, growing legs, and skittering across the room. They spoke in wild-eyed awe at scenes like the one where the dog opens itself like a peeled banana and mutates into a 12-foot tentacle creature. I didn't sleep right for a week. But one scene in particular was of such simple yet astounding brilliance that my dad and his brother spoke about it in hushed tones at a long red light. You see, the virus could have infected anybody, so they didn't know who was who. So they had to test everybody's blood. They knew the thing didn't like heat, so they stuck a needle in the end of a flamethrower, so it was red hot, and then they started poking it into the blood sample. My heart raced as my uncle drew out the suspense. Next sample, psst, nothing. Next sample, a little plume of smoke, psst, nothing. Then suddenly, they stuck the needle in the next sample and the blood leaped up out of the dish. I jumped. This was amazing. Just talking about the movie was rebellious and terrifying and totally not allowed anywhere near home or church or school. I wanted to see this movie immediately. My dad would often sneak in movies Mom wouldn't let me watch whenever she was away for some reason or another. We sprawled out on their vast king-size bed and watched RoboCop and Aliens and Terminator and quite a few others during the years. Action movies and horror movies and gut-wrenching sci-fi movies and shoot-'em-up movies. And each one ended the exact same way. Don't tell your mom, okay? And I would nod and keep the secret, of course. Honestly, movies and food were really the only two things that brought my dad and I together growing up. I think that's why I feel so close connection to them to this day. Certain movies just remind me of close times with Dad. I remember once we went on a long road trip up north, just him and I. The entire way there, he told me the story of Waterworld. It was a terrible Kevin Costner movie, but I hadn't seen it before he told me about it. He went through scene after scene for hundreds of miles, and by the time we arrived at our destination, he finished the big final scene. On the way home, he told me the entire story of the Shawshank Redemption. To this day, I'll be the first to admit Waterworld is a pretty awful movie, but I still watch it fairly often. I hold it and Shawshank Redemption in pretty high places on my shelf because, well, they're both really good dad movies for me. Years later, at the ripe age of 18, I had gotten a good summer job up the road from my grandpa's house, where I was living with my mom at the time. I had gotten in the habit of riding my bike a block or two away to the video store and renting movies after work. I got into the habit of renting one really good movie I wanted to see, and then picking one really terrible looking movie. I found that sometimes the worse a movie was, the more enjoyable it could get. I rented a few good ones here and there, but one night I wandered into the horror section. I suddenly spotted a black movie box with the glowing silhouette of a man in Arctic gear reaching out at me on the cover. In blue letters that looked as though they were clawed into the picture, I saw it. The Thing. I snatched the box off the shelf and sprinted to the counter. I rented it immediately and feverishly pedaled home. This was it. This was the legend. I was going to see the terrifying end-all be-all of sci-fi horror that had built in my mind for a decade. I got home, whipped up a quick batch of macaroni and cheese, and popped in the tape. My mom and grandpa were asleep by this point, so I had the living room all to myself. Grandpa was as deaf as a post and actually slept through a legit hurricane once, but Mom was a light sleeper. You could fart from 3 rooms over and Mom would jump up and run through the house screaming about gunfire or something. I would sleep to music sometimes, and once I put on a techno CD. On it was a song called Busy Child by a highly mom-objectionable band called The Crystal Method. It had one part of the song with a fairly high-pitched siren whoop. I kept the volume low, but my mom still busted in my door in a panic because she thought the police were outside. Anyway, back to the thing. I kept the volume even lower than usual this time because Mom would have had 3 fits at once if she saw what I was watching. I turned the volume up just enough to hear it from directly in front of the TV. I laid on the floor on my back all the way up against the entertainment center so I could hear as much as possible. The lights were off. My mac and cheese was done. I was full and excited and on the verge of giddiness as the movie title burned the jagged letters into the screen. The next hour or so was a wild, suspenseful thrill ride full of jump scares, gory effects, enough fake blood and unknown alien bodily fluid to fill a plastic kiddie pool, and a very ill-tempered and heavily bearded Kurt Russell. Suddenly, the big scene started. Everyone was suspicious of everyone else. The cast was dying off quickly, and at least one of them was the Thing. The blood test had begun. I physically shivered with excitement. I'd never been so excited to be so scared in my life. The moment came. The hot needle plunged into the blood sample. It came alive and shot up with a shriek just as the fattest Louisiana cockroach I've ever encountered in my life ran across the floor and up across my forehead. I screamed and jumped to my feet in a panic. I slapped myself in the face so hard I forgot my name for a few seconds. The roach flew through the air and landed on the floor just as startled as I was. I stomped around frantically, trying to smash this roach that I estimate was about the size of a small suitcase. The roach screamed, I screamed, Mom screamed, the lights came on and I froze. The roach froze. On TV, a man split in half and became a large mouth and began eating another guy's face off. Mom screamed again. The roach and I formed an alliance and both ran for the door. Mom started praying. Grandpa came down the hall, loudly mumbling something about a random story when he had been shipwrecked in the Rocky Mountains or something. I turned the movie off and Mom and Grandpa angrily stormed back to their rooms after hearing about how poor my life choices are and how disappointed Jesus is with my movie rentals. I went to my room in a pout. It was about another 2 years before I got to see the end of The Thing. I watched it in a well-lit room with the volume up in the middle of the day, sitting on a stool, holding a large can of bug spray. Totally worth it.